Welcome back to Chester County's Historic Preservation Network's Fall Virtual Heritage Series, live at 5 on the third Thursday of each month throughout the end of 2021. We are thrilled to join you after this summer's Town Tours and Village Walks program. Joining us tonight is Tim Caban, board member and treasurer of CCHPN. Tim, please tell us about tonight's program.
In tonight's program, we will meet artist Ann Bedrick, who will introduce us to the women of Warwick Furnace. A descendant of the furnace's originator, Anna Nutt, Ann was born and raised in Westchester and attended the demonstration school at Westchester University. She graduated from Moore College of Art and, as a member of the Chester County Historic Preservation Network Board, creates many beautiful historic drawings that appear in the CCHPN's Ledger publication. Ann is also known in the county as a collier who produces charcoal at Hopewell Furnace. Throughout Ann's program, folks can submit questions by clicking the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom screen and typing in your questions. And now, please welcome Ann Bedrick.
We are in the Potts Cemetery out in back of Coventry Hall. There's Anna Mae Potts. There's David Potts. That's Anna Nutt Potts. That's Anna's granddaughter, Susan Potts. Francis Potts. Nathaniel. Robert Hobart Potts. Another Juliana. And here's the lady herself, Rebecca Grace. This is Anna Rutter Savage Nutt's daughter. She is the Iron Mistress of Coventry and for a while at Warwick. I am leaving the cemetery. There they are. This is the first part of the tour. This is where it began, in Coventry.
And now please welcome Ann Bedrick.
Hi. Okay. I gotta apologize for that filmography because there were lots of brambles and pickers in there, and it was difficult to get around. But that's where they all are. That's Rebecca Grace, Rebecca Savage Nutt Grace. She was the wife of Samuel Nutt Jr. She was one of her husband was one of the iron masters. He came on after his uncle died. And soon after, they actually built the furnace. Now, I'm going to read a little excerpt from our aficionado on the iron and steel industry of Pennsylvania. This is Dan Graham's book on Samuel Nutt. I am going to read an excerpt from his will to his wife, Anna, who is Rebecca's mother. This is, I want to point out, this is a little different than most guys would tell their wives as a remainder to a will. I give and bequeath unto my dear and loving wife, Anna Nutt, after all my debts and funeral charges paid, 1/2 of all right to the furnace and forge, together with all buildings thereunto belonging. Secondly, the half of all my right to the lands whereon they stand, or are appropriate thereunto, viz. the half, my share of 100 acres, whereas the forge standeth, and the half of the land or tract whereon the furnace stands, and to her heirs forever. That's to Coventry Forge. That was the first, I would say, producing of iron industry in Chester County. That is the Coventry Forge in 1717, I believe. Dan will have to correct me. This sentence is very important. I likewise give unto her all my land that layeth on the northern side of a line run west and by north from the southwest corner of Henry Hockley's field on the north side of the mine road to another line drawn from the line run on the east side of Thomas Savage's field, and where it crosses a run on the same side a little above his house, and from thence on the southeast corner of the mine tract, and to her heirs forever. I likewise give unto her 120 acres of land on the north side of the south branch of the French Creek, in such a place as that shall think that she shall think proper to build a furnace on, provided it be not above 130 perches in length. That's 7 football fields. That upon the said creek and to her heirs, which liberty to cut as much timber of the adjacent land as build the same. I likewise give unto her and her heirs forever that house that Samuel Nutt Jr. bought at Lancaster. And he goes on to talk about things as if he were talking to a business partner. And what I'm finding out, and I did find quite a bit out at the Pottstown Historical Society, that she was quite the industrialist. She was running the show a lot. She was actually, and you'll see later, being sued and suing people for rights to her furnace. And I am going to kind of give a big introduction to the man that, like I said, is the aficionado of the iron and steel industry. That is Dan Graham. I'm going to be saying things, and I hope he comes in and interjects anything he can and will, please. At this point, we're going to start our PowerPoint or slideshow. We're about to start. This is the Warwick furnace. This is our iron in our Women of Warwick furnace, from iron to lavender. This is the iron. This is a Latrobe painting. And there is our lavender. Isn't that pretty? And this is the house, circa around, it was taken by Octavius Bulls. So I would say it was around either the late 1800s or early 1900s. Okay, next. This is a thing that was done for the county down in Maryland, I believe. This shows all of the iron furnaces in the northern part of the county, goes into Berks County and Lancaster County. And Warwick furnace is, yeah. And this This is to give you an idea of how many buildings were actually on the property. And most of them are log. There's about 24 log structures, and some of them were barns. There are 3 barns and stables on the property at this time. This is 1798. And you'll see there's quite a bit of stuff going on there. There's a grist mill, there's a sawmill, there's a blacksmith shop. All of these buildings were on this plantation. Okay, next. And there'll be 2 more tax records coming after this from 1805 to 1816. And this is David Potts at this point who has it. He is the great grandson of Anna. He was Samuel Potts's son. This is 1805, I believe. And over here to the right is David Potts's tax listings. You can also see the cost that he's paying in taxes. And the next one will be 1816. He's paying big bucks there. He's on the left side this time. Next. Okay, and this is where it's located. This is what was pretty much, this map was 1849. It was done by Kennedy, but it's not showing owners. It's showing mills, furnaces, schools, institutional structures. Next. This is the Kennedy 1860s map. This is the property owners, and you can see the dots that are going up from the furnace in the pink area. That road, by the way, does not exist anymore. That was redone in 1915. Next. This is the 1873 Whitmer's map, and it's vague, but there's a pink area that's pretty clearly marked, and there are a lot of buildings there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 buildings. Next. This is the 1883 Brews map. By this time, it's gone and left the Rudders, the Savage Nut Potts families. And now Thomas K. Sterrett owns it at this point, and he was very into cattle and dairy cow. And he, I believe, enlarged some of the barns at this time. Next. And this is the Pews are owning it now in 1933. And you can see where the road changed. It is no longer going up from the house from across the bridge. It's now, it was vacated there and moved further back up and over. As I said, it was vacated and changed, and new road constructed in 1915. These are old etches from a newspaper dated 1897, and I believe it was the Reading Eagle, but I'm not sure. I have to check on that. You can see the proportion of the stack, and a lot of it is missing. A lot of it is missing, even at this point. And I believe that's because Mr. Sterrett was borrowing stone to build walls and barns and things. This is the inside of the charcoal furnace. I mean, the charcoal barn. And later you'll see a picture of the inside proportions. Next. And this is on the flip side of the charcoal furnace. That's the end of the sluice with the drop going down to the wheel. Next. This is where the road was running between the office building and the charcoal barn. The road used to go up and around and behind the back of the charcoal barn where the Teamsters could dump off the ore, the lime, and the charcoal. Next. Here you can see, and this picture was taken after 1915, where the office building is now on the opposite side of the road. And there's the remains of the charcoal barn up there. And this building here is covering where the furnace was on the left. Next. And there's the picture that was seen previous. Next. And there's the stack. And like I said, this was about the end of the century, the 19th century. Next. And that's the wheel housing, I believe. Yes. Next. And this is later. This is from the Cocalico Historical Society up in Ephrata. I believe Stauffer may have been taking these pictures, but you can see the two outbuildings that you can pretty much see now if you were to drive by the house. Next. Here's another angle. And there's the stack in front here and the charcoal barn. Next. That's close up. And this was 1920. Next. This is a little later, and you're looking at some of the buildings that are familiar to people now. 1938, this is when the Pews had it. Next. That's the office building, which is now at this point in 1938 is on the opposite side of the road. Next. And there's the stack again, 1948. This is 1948. Next. And here's the house when the Pews owned it. This is around the 1930s and 40s. I keep referring to the Pews because they acquired the property in 1927. And one thing about the Pews, I have a few things to say about Alberta. She was quite the character. And I'm trying to find where my stuff is. This is Alberta. Oh, you can't see me. I'll show you afterwards. Okay, next. I'm sorry, I can't mute my phone. This is to show the scale next to our Historical Commission chair. Next. This is how big that charcoal barn is. That's her in the charcoal barn. It's a huge structure. Next. And this is of Samuel Savage's lineage. Samuel Savage was the husband of Anna Rutter Savage, Nutt. And there you can kind of, this is their children, Rebecca and Ruth. Ruth married John Potts. Rebecca married his nephew, not his nephew, Sam Nutt's nephew, and they had one child. Next. And here's the will of Samuel Savage, once again, leaving everything to Anna. This was Anna's husband. Next. And this is Anna Nutt. This is one of her cases where she's suing William Branson for trespass. And this is one of many, back and forth. Next. And this is the will of Samuel Nutt, leaving everything to Rebecca. When he soon dies, after the furnace is built, Rebecca pretty much joins her mother, and in the actual furnace was called Anna Nutt and Company, and that included her son and her nephew-in-law and her daughter, and they were both extremely involved with the furnace and its goings-ons. Next. This is Rebecca Grace's will. And it's funny, and Shannon at the Pottstown Historical Society brought this up, that Rebecca was leaving things pretty much to women and her daughters and things. And Anna also. Anna left many of her, there's very few males mentioned in her will. And I'm not sure, Dan would know more about this for sure, about Rebecca's will. And the next. That's the third page of her will. Next. This is page 1 and 4 of David Potts Jr.'s will. And I'm sorry, I didn't put all 4 on, but you can see where he gives to his 3, I believe they were cousins, Catherine Miles Potts Gartley and Juliana and Joanna, her spinster sisters, who live at their grandfather's house in Pottstown. It was also his great-grandfather, I believe. Yes, or great-great-grandfather, Samuel Potts. I just put that in there to show my connection. Next. And there's the Gartleys. In fact, the bump in Elizabeth's picture there was Sam Gartley, her husband, is the lady with the arrow pointing to her. And they are buried over in the Potts Cemetery section of Mount Zion Cemetery, just entering Pottstown on Route 100 North. Next. And this is the will of Tom Skerritt, who leaves everything to his wife and daughter. And they were pretty much, they were on the farm until they sold it. And then it went to the Merzes. I believe that's Maud's married name. And then it went to the Kochs, the Kochs. And unfortunately, they lost it at a sheriff's sale. The Wards picked it up. And then the Wards sold it to the Pews, I believe. And I will have to go and check my deed descent on that. I'll talk a little bit about the Pews after I'm done this PowerPoint. Next. And now my advertising section is for this book that I relied heavily on, that I probably forgot half of everything as I was talking. Next. And this is Dan. And the picture there, I don't know if it's coming through okay, but that was a survey of Sam Nutt's land. Next. And this is the Pottstown Historical Society. If you want to know anything about the Pottses, go there. Next. This is one of the books that was written that's about the furnace and a bunch of the other little mills and furnaces around the area. Next. There's a charcoal trail over at Warwick County Park, and this was art that I did for the furnace, and it's on all the boards as you go through the trail. Highly recommend it. It's a kind of loose depiction of Warwick Furnace, but the house, the mansion, is on the opposite side of the furnace. It would actually in real life be where these tenant houses are in the front of it. And it shows all the different stages of charcoal making. Next. And now I'm going to just put in a little word before I give a little thing about the Pews and flash up a few things. We will soon be traveling back to 1738 to the Warwick Furnace Farm. Next. And this was a book done by Estelle Kremers. Next. And this is Estelle. She is one of the ladies of Warwick Furnace, of Warwick Township, its furnace and other furnaces. And God bless her. Unfortunately, she is not with us anymore. Next. Before I introduce Warwick Furnace Farm, I want to talk about the Pews. I'm going to hold up a few things. These are the Pews. And there's something a little bit interesting about the Pews. They were very into their hunts. They were very into raising pheasants for their hunts. They were into fox hunts. They were into all kinds of things. And it says, well, that's Estelle. They were very into outdoors life. She was a fascinating character in the family tree. Begins a brief biography of her in the First 300, a book that was written about the main line and stuff, and the first big industrialist families. We knew that she loved her garden at Warwick and brought her gardener from the main line there. But she, her interests were gardening, as I said, and the natural world was exceptional. And that led her to advocacy for the preservation of open spaces and buildings of historic importance. She was also quite the horse person. She was an avid sportswoman, devoted to salmon and trout fishing. and participated in golf, tennis, swimming, sailing, horseback riding, as I said, and shooting. She was a champion markswoman, and she was a student of Annie Oakley. And they would host events. They would host these hunting parties, and it is told by one of the caretakers, the horse keeper, that at a certain time in history, a president came to participate in pheasant hunting. So that's just a little bit about Alberta Pugh, and I'm sorry I have slighted her. And this is Estelle's picture on the screen at the moment, but I am finished, and I am going to hand it off to the Rosens of Warwick Furnace Farm. Here is Caroline, and I'm going to have her introduce all the ladies of Warwick Furnace Farm.
Hi, thank you for having us. Thank you, Anne, for that introduction and a little bit of history about this property that we feel so very lucky to be residents of and stewards of. I have next to me my mom, Dolly, and one of the sisters, Charlotte. On the screen, you'll notice kind of all the girls. We're 4 sisters, and my mom and dad here. We moved here in 2017, and we've just felt so inspired and captivated by the history here, and in particular, the history of the strong women that have been at this property, in particular, Anna, but also, you know, Rebecca, Grace, and all the others. So if you could go to the next one, Kathleen, I'll give you a little bit of what we were doing here. So starting with our agricultural practices, we have started a lavender business. So if you'd like to go to the next slide, you can see on the top of the hill, we are growing 5 cultivars of certified naturally grown lavender. And I have to say, when we looked at this property and went up to the top of the hilltop, and for those of you that are local and familiar with the area, we really have been so lucky in the incredible work that's been done by preservation organizations to preserve and protect this incredible land around us. And it's sort of funny to think that in its heyday, the furnace, it would have been so different here with like active charcoal and production all the time, and probably in quite a contrast to the sort of bucolic natural setting that we find ourselves in. So if you want to go to the next slide, we, this is my mom at the top of the hill, but we wanted to pick a crop that had a bit of historical significance, though not traditionally found in this area. But it was certainly a beautiful crop to pick and has many uses historically that my mom will tell us a little bit about. But we also picked it because we wanted to be able to preserve and not have to make a lot of modernization or mechanizations to the buildings. We wanted to be able to keep the sort of farm structures. While a lot of them needed a lot of rehabilitation, which we'll show you in a couple of slides, we wanted to make sure that they could be useful, but not have to be modernized for sort of contemporary farming. Can you go to the next slide, please? So these are just some inspirational pictures of the farm to give you a sense of the mood, but we do take the sort of land stewardship role very seriously, and preserving the sort of French Creek that is down at the bottom of the valley, and trying to restore habitats and other things like that. You can just go through. These are mostly just to give you some inspirational pictures of the sense of the place. So here's my mom, who is a culinary historian, and while her first love was the Victorian era, she's had to travel a little bit back in time to sort of get in the vibe of the house here. Want to say anything?
Well, we can thank Queen Victoria for the commercialization of the plant of lavender. So we have a strange connection that we didn't even know until recently, that we can thank her once again for helping us out here with a beautiful historic notion of this lavender, all the things we could do with it. And we can do a lot of things. It's a great, generous giving plant.
So this is me, and I come from a background in the arts, and I've sort of been using my artistic background to promote and curate the areas around the farm. We're sort of very interested in this idea of keeping kind of the flame of history alive in a sort of artistic embodiment, rather than maybe like a very strict
Interpretation.
accurate museum interpretation, but
Right.
sort of like of the vibe and of the feeling of these different time periods we like to travel through, whether it's the spaces, interiors in the house that we're creating, or our marketing materials. Been looking at a lot of historic art for inspiration. Next. And there's Lily, who's our formulator. We make natural products for home and beauty with the lavender. All the oil distillation happens on the farm, and all of the products get made here. There's Charlotte, who's sitting over here, who heads our wellness program, which maybe doesn't have so much of a historic shift, but it definitely capitalizes on the healing and calming and aesthetic properties of lavender, and also using this beautiful landscape that we're in to bring our community together and offer some pretty lovely experiences. Next one, and Camille, she's not here, but she is also involved in sort of the marketing and sales and all the products. So we've got a lot of girl power here on the farm. Next slide, please. And those are some of our products you can see. So when we got here, one of the first projects that we undertook was resurrecting Alberta Pugh's garden. She was an award-winning gardener, and she had lots of very special plants and bulbs in this overgrown area. It was very much like the secret garden when we arrived. There was, it just has such a magical feeling here, all the overgrown stonework, and we worked with Kai Peterson from Sunleaf Gardens to sort of make a couple modifications, but we really, if you worked hard to sort of preserve a lot of the plants that she had here. If you want to go to the next slide, you can see our sort of finished, more manicured results. And if you go to the next one, you can see a little bit of the process. We did take quite a bit of care to dig up every bulb.
Blue pine.
Yes. Well, on the left bottom of the screen is actually an original blueprint by Thomas Sears, who was hired by the Pughs to design the sort of landscape and garden areas. And he, you may be familiar with him, as he was quite well known on the main line. He also did Mount Cuba's garden. So that was pretty cool. We found some original plant lists and things that would have been here. And we even went so far as to scoop up all the dirt and spread it out on the top of the hill, just in case we missed anything, we could pull it up and put it back in the garden. You can go to the next slide. And there it is in its glory. So that's quite a beautiful space that we appreciate enjoying. You can go to the next one, please. This is inside the stone barn when we arrived. It is rather gross, but that is actually bird poop, making those like sculptural stalactites that almost look like a New York art installation. So this was a health hazard, obviously, to take up, and the whole floor had to come up. But if you go to the next one, you can kind of see it cleaned now. And I live in the front part of this barn. And if you want to go to the next slide, this was the dairy barn, which is the largest of the three barns. And actually, when we started taking the siding off, it was kind of a miracle that the barn was still standing, because there was absolutely nothing holding up that corner of the barn that you see there except for that poison ivy. So it was just sort of
Maybe the window frames.
Maybe the window frames. But it was in pretty bad shape. So it was one of the projects we had to get on pretty quickly. And this, as with the barn previous and the house, we worked with a historic preservation architect, John Milner, who's pretty well respected in this area, to try and maintain as much of the authenticity and integrity of the buildings as possible, because it was very important to us that they maintain their character, but also that they would stand for another 200 years, you know, because we look at our responsibility here, not just for our lifetime, but for many future generations to come. So if you want to go, you can see the final
Abracadabra.
Abracadabra. And the next one has a couple of process pictures in it. So it was very exciting. We worked with Precision Builders to come in, and they built it in a similar style to how it had been constructed before, with the logs and precise builder, excuse me. Next one. And so this was inside what would have been the creamery of the dairy project that was here, that we've converted into our little farm shop, but it was quite derelict and magical. Me being from the suburbs didn't realize that all of those vines in there were poison ivy, so that was like sort of like a good initiation to the country, as I was like swinging off them like Tarzan. And the caretaker here at the time informed me that I would be very itchy the next day, and he was really right. So we're learning here pretty quickly on
Rookie mistake
on our journey. Yeah, embarrassing to say. So next slide, there's the back of the dairy barn. There had been 3 silos there, and we did remove the middle one because there was water infiltration that there was really no way to remedy, and it wasn't a really original part of the barn. So we decided that it would be
2 was plenty.
Sure. Next one. And there you can kind of have a front view of the 3 barns. So all the barns got new roofs and new siding, and some masonry work done to them, but still really trying to maintain a historic character to them. Next. Well, there's my mom at the top of the hill. So we can call in rainbows also whenever we need them.
Double ones if it's necessary. Yeah.
And next, so even though we're focusing on women, I would say that none of this project would be possible without my dad. So I just wanted to give him a little shout out, even though we are talking about the ladies here at the farm. But we are happy to answer any questions. And again, just feel really so grateful to be here. And in the future, we'll be sharing some new adaptations to the house. We've been doing just mostly preservation work here. One of the wonderful things about this house just sort of being a weekend property for the Pughs was that that it wasn't lived in that often, and so a lot of things weren't changed. So when Bronyard Oakey did a sort of, I think in 1910-13, he did a restoration on the house, and it's pretty much remained intact since then.
Yeah, it's a bit later, 28,
yeah. Excuse me. So we have added a kitchen addition with John Milner that is sympathetic and in the style of, without having to affect the sort of integrity of the original house, which has been exciting to work on, and we can't wait to share that with you. So
now we will take questions and answers. As Tim shared, if anyone has any questions, please type them in.
I have a question. So can I just ask it, or?
Absolutely.
Well, we had heard this rumor that that Ben Franklin sort of fancied Rebecca Grace, and that's why, even though her husband did help him out with the debt, but that's really why the Franklin stove was cast here. Is that true? Anybody? Dan?
I would say yes and no.
Okay.
It's a longer question than that. The original Franklin stove was definitely made at Warwick.
Yes.
I don't know that it had anything to do with Rebecca. There's a couple Chester County rumors that once Robert Grace died, Ben was enamored with with Rebecca, and they became good friends. And she supposedly was the last person to see him alive, but I don't know that any of that's been documented. So it's a great story, but I don't know. Oh.
I just have a comment. I don't know why I talked so long when that was much more fascinating with the ladies.
No, but there are a lot of stories about Alberta Pugh being quite a firecracker, and many of the women that I feel like are referenced here, you just hear that they're such characters. So I guess I'm curious what people are going to say about her.
Well, probably have to live up down to that reputation.
Sure.
I have a question for the ladies. Can you tell us a little bit about what your background is and what led you to come to Warwick? Because so many times we have historic buildings that sit empty and derelict in search of a caretaker, and you seem to be such a perfect match with such the right amount of skills and resources. Can you tell us a little bit about yourselves and how you came to arrive here?
Sure. It's been a bit surprising to us how our past sort of very diverse backgrounds have worked out luckily in our favor. But I mean, thanks to my mom and dad, grew up with a real appreciation of history. I mean, maybe I should let you start with your background since you started it all.
Well, I'll just start with my husband had spent many years in England, going to university there, and he loved the English countryside. And you know, things happened. We met in Manhattan and raised our family right outside, 12 miles, basically outside of Manhattan. But he was always had that image in the back of his head that he would love to find something like that. And we talked about moving to England, and all these guys said,
No, I said I wanted
I know you said, but the 3 out of 4, all right, said no.
I have been enamored with Beatrix Potter since I was small, and I wanted to live in a farmhouse with talking animals.
So that being said, and you know, we left this 1887 Queen Anne Tudor revival, this incredible Victorian home that we restored. The outside matched the inside. It was just a fun, beautiful place to live. So the bar was high for what?
For original detail.
For original detail, and what we weren't never looking for something modern. So in any event, we looked for 2 years in Bucks County, and then we just kept going further and further because Chester County is so beautifully preserved. You know, we were really drawn to the preservation of the inventory of stone buildings here is phenomenal. And
but you did find that they were we looked at so many properties that either had been like very unsympathetically modernized on the interiors, or they were completely derelict and had really been let go. So I think there's some really important work to be done for preservation and also adaptive reuse, because I think if you can't find a good reason and a good way that's obviously sympathetic with the area and respectful of the property to use these buildings, it's very hard to justify the expense of fixing them. And also, just like if you're not in them and using them, it's like the animals are in there right away, you know, the water's in there, like you just can't maintain them if you're not actively engaged with them.
I'm just going to say that when I saw this property on the computer when it first came on, and I saw like maybe 4 or 5 pictures, and I just said, "This is
I know."
it.
She's like, "We're moving.
This is it. This is the house. This is it." Because I had tried hard to like and love the other houses, but you know the one when you feel it. And we just we were told we could come and look around outside if we were still interested. You know, we could come back and have a proper tour. And
all the girls thought that they were crazy.
Yeah,
they were supposed to be downsizing. And
we were
but
we were capsizing. We were going the other way.
I remember walking into the dairy barn, and there was really nowhere to walk because it was pretty much caving in. And I just looked at my dad and was like, "So what are you, this is what you're doing with your retirement?" So just to your question too, we do have all of these skills, but at the same time, like, we're not farmers. We don't come from a farming background. So like YouTube and Google and a lot of trial and error, emphasis on both of trial and error, I think has led us, but we don't have a lavender background while we might love the plant and the product. So a lot of learning as we go, I would say.
But we fell in love with the area and specifically the property. And so were we looking for
and
this?
our neighbors
And we weren't looking for it, but we found it, and the thought of not having it was much worse than the thought of having it.
All the construction.
yeah. I mean, it was really up at the top of the hill. You thought like, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. Like, when would you ever get to live in a place like this? So it's a bit of a gamble, but hopefully it's
I'm just going to speed this up. I know you asked a specific question. So I've done a lot of things in my life, including having my own cosmetic business in Capizio's in Manhattan, which is where I met my husband. But having said that, I'm trained as a chef. I've taken several historical cooking classes near Scotland, where I could hardly understand a word anybody was saying. And so this passion of history and food and cooking kind of coalesced. And when I saw this property, I thought, this is the perfect expression.
Yes, wait, hold on. Look at this fireplace in the.
Oh,
Charlotte, put your head down. So she's gonna.
I'm gonna be living in that fireplace.
Well,
So,
Do you guys cook in that fireplace?
yes, we
Yes.
do with
Oh,
a
God, good for you.
a reflector oven, a reproduction reflector oven. So, and I've done a lot of things. I've taught a lot of cooking things, and I so enjoy it. I love sharing food history. I do talks about food history. What does Queen Victoria have with opium, Chinese customs cultures, things like that. So this seemed like a very good place to put those skills to use, and I will give it to Claire.
I think that answers the question more than
Well, do you have events? Do you have events where you encourage people to come to the farm and experience all the different things you have to offer?
When the lavender is in bloom, people are invited to come for harvest events, and we're working on some distillation educational programs and things like that. And we're hoping to do some garden tours. We're really still getting a lot of the restoration stuff finished. So we've had a lot of projects ongoing since we got here. But as we progress, we hope to invite more people to visit.
So we have people who do painting in the fields, and it's just beautiful, the work they make. It's so exciting to see everyone's vision, is different, and
to have artists here.
But all lovely, yeah.
Excellent.
And aromatherapy yoga also.
I was just going to say, I was up there for a plenary session. I did not do well, ironically, but it was an experience. I definitely recommend it. And then you can go to the little store afterwards.
I have a question and statement. I don't know if you know that Samuel Nutt, who sort of founded the place, has a book in the Chester County Historical Society that's considered to be the first cookbook in America. So you may be interested, if you haven't seen that, look at it and pull it out. And it's kind of crazy because it also talks about squashing bugs to, fix ailments and stuff. But it's a cookbook.
I imagine they let you check that out, right? Like
no, you don't. You have to look at it, but it's kind of cool. It is his stuff. But the second thing, do you have any knowledge, which I don't, of when your house was built? Is there anything in the Okie stuff that tells you when the
first I heard was 1736 to 1738.
There's a lot of years that you see, right? You see a few years bouncing around there.
Yeah. And I know, like, we're in the older part of the house right now, and then it goes up a few steps, and that's a later part of
ceilings
the
are
house.
higher over there,
and the woodwork's a little more intricate.
Yeah,
that seems early for me based on who was there and so on. But that's interesting. I want to look at the Okie stuff. Maybe he has something in there. Thank you.
No, I mean, we're very eager to learn more about it. There's like a couple confusing different things online, and I know the Wikipedia page is not accurate.
Boy, that's not even, the Wikipedia page is not even in this realm of reality. We got to get that fixed. I mean, I was going to talk to you about that, but
we're eager to do that.
I am going to say right now, the Van Leers had nothing whatsoever to do with Warwick Furnace. That I have no clue where they got that from. I don't know where they went to research this.
That's
It
all
is
the Reading
absolutely
Furnace
not
stuff.
true.
I was
But
gonna say that,
It's
yeah.
the Reading, they've confused Reading Furnace with Warwick Furnace. The Van Leers were involved in Reading Furnace.
Or Warren Point. It might be
Warren Point.
Warren Point. They're confusing it with, yeah.
But we
I just want to say one thing really quick. All this was done with French and Pickering and Thomas P. Bentley and the Rosens. Everything that you see now is French and they call it French and Pickering Creeks Conservation Trust. They are very responsible for this. And another person is Charles Jacob.
Oh, yes.
We gave a special award to Charles for his work, his decades of work. Charles Jacob. He was a supervisor for Warwick Township. He has been involved with Joanna Furnace. He has been involved with Hopewell and of course with Warwick Furnace. I can't let this go without saying something about Charlie. I call him Charlie. He insisted Charles, but that's it. I also want to say thank you to the archivists at the Chester County Archives, the librarians and receptionists at the Chester County History Center, the Pottstown Historical Society, and my friends Maureen and Joanna that lived down the road from the Rosens that had a few stories to say about the silk netters at the Warwick Furnace. He was the horse manager. And I just thank you for Kathleen for pulling this together, because I am all over the place, as you might guess, and she just pulled it all together. So I just wanted to say thank you to those people and to the superstar of the show, Dan Graham. He is our guest appearance, and he is, as I said, the aficionado on the iron and steel industry in Pennsylvania.
What we ought to be pushing for is a state marker on your property for Anna Nutt, who was the first female industrialist, I mean, in the United States, and there isn't one.
Yeah,
and that would be, you know, they're receptive to doing stuff on women. They don't like buildings anymore, and they don't like cannons anymore, but people they like. So that'd be a fun thing to do, I think.
Well, I would say she is the first industrialist of the country, but there is Rebecca Lukens, who is the first industrialist of the United States. She came a little later, but this precursor, Anna Rutter Savage Nutt, she was quite the thing. So
you don't have any
I totally
images
agree with Dan.
Oh,
Are there any images of her, paintings, anything?
No, about the only image of anybody of the Potts family is her daughter Ruth, and that's hanging at Pottsgrove.
And boy,
That's about the only image.
I say that's a scary one. I'm not sure it's her, but it's not.
I know.
Ruth wouldn't want that to be her picture, I wouldn't think.
I know. But that's it.
I have a quick question. Were there any diaries between Ruth and Rebecca? Like, did they, of course, were things like that ever found in their personal belongings, like diaries that might shed more light on, I don't know, like goings on?
Ruth Savage and Rebecca Savage?
Yeah. Were they sisters or cousins or something?
No, they were sisters.
Sisters, yeah.
They were sisters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We need flashcards for.
I know.
Monopoly.
I haven't seen any.
Oh.
There's a bunch of neat stuff on Rebecca that you could find. Some of it's real, some of it isn't. But she lived longer, and there's some neat stuff about her. So, but I've not seen anything that she's written or that Ruth Potts wrote.
Oh.
program as we met the fascinating women associated with Warwick Furnace. Special thanks to Ann Bedrick, as well as you, our viewers, for making the CCHPN Virtual Heritage Series program possible.
Our CCHPN team looks forward to seeing you next month on Thursday, October 21st, live at 5, when we discover the East Brandywine Township's Bondsville Mill, a mill with a 100-year history. Details and registration information are available at the CCHPN website. Enjoy your evening, everyone. We'll see you next month. Good night.